Let's get into the subject of cardiovascular training. I want to get down to kind of brass tacks on the basic tenets of cardio training, the benefits of cardio training. Also want to talk about how it's kind of been bad-mouthed with regard to kind of the fitness space and how
fat loss.
Yeah, the fitness space is very much about physique and aesthetics, and cardio plays a very specific role in that if you're trying to achieve a certain body fat level or level of quote unquote leanness. And it's been really dumbed down. It's kind of, I think people have kind of lost their way. And as a result, this has been happening for so long. I think there's a certain amount of wisdom and knowledge that has not been acquired and as a result, not been shared to give people a better perspective of how to effectively get this stuff into your program to help you no matter what your goals are, whether they are longevity goals, just have general better health and wellness. And there could be some very specific reasons you're looking for a cardio program in order to achieve that, and some general reasons. Also aesthetics or physique based goals. And then also talk about some specifically about performance goals and some of the things that people do, like whether it's competitively, semi-competitively, or just kind of on the weekend as like weekend warriors or whatever. Everything from, go out and, charging down the mountain on your snowboard or your mountain bike or getting out on your surfboard or whatever else, and how having a better understanding of your cardio programming and not being afraid of it, but organizing yourself around it can really, really boost your performance. So I'll talk about those things. So let's jump right into kind of what the basic tenets of cardio programming is and what's happening in the body physiologically and even anatomically when we start to implement cardiovascular training. So let's define cardiovascular training for purposes of this conversation.
I think for the purposes of this conversation, when we're talking about cardiovascular training, we're talking about improving our body's ability to utilize oxygen through exercising our heart and exercising our lungs, and then also exercising our body so that our body can perform as basic as walking, moving, whatever it is, without fatigue, and to be able to enjoy it and have fun.
All right. So when we start to perform activities, there's different activities that all activity is going to impact the cardiovascular system. So when we define the cardiovascular system, we're talking about basically heart, lungs, blood vessels, right? So the
circulatory system.
The circulatory system. So that which is carrying blood away and to the heart and lungs, right? To bring oxygen into the system and other nutrients, which we'll talk about, not too in depth, but we'll get into it. So that's effectively what we're trying to work with here from an anatomical and a physiological perspective. Those are general high level shit you want to understand. Why is that important as we get down the line? Well, if this system brings nutrients, blood, oxygen to the areas of the body in order for it to not just perform, but to survive. If it's not working properly, and there are some things that we know and we've learned about in spades, particularly now in today's day and age, where our cardiovascular systems collectively as a whole, particularly here in the West, are shit.
Crap.
They're crap. So when we look at things like atherosclerosis, cardiovascular disease, heart attack being the number one still killer in the United States is heart attack, minus all the C19s and all the other stuff, still doesn't equate to the amount of people that die every year from a heart attack, which in a sense is a completely preventable disease. And that generally starts, heart attack generally doesn't happen on its own. Right. So, and the only reason I'm bringing that up and really stressing that is maybe if we did a little bit more cardiovascular training in our lives, right, that just includes moving, we wouldn't have this type of morbidity rate that we've got right now. The fact of the matter is when you cardiovascular train, you're doing a few things. The heart is surrounded by muscle. It is effectively a muscle. So one of the things to note is you are strengthening the muscles that move blood, oxygen, nutrients throughout your body, right? When you do that, or when you create a need or a demand on the body for this increased heart output, and we're going to talk about this, but when you create this increased output, the body then starts to recognize it needs to drive more blood, nutrients, oxygen to more areas of the body more efficiently and effectively. So what it actually does is it lays down more of a vascular system. It increases the number of blood vessels within the system in order to transport these nutrients. So it would make sense, good conventional wisdom. Let's just say you live in a very small city and that city grows very, very rapidly. But you don't have roadways to get to those other cities, which are
San Jose.
Yeah, which are part of your infrastructure, right? All the things that make you go and makes the economy work and puts food on your table and brings, commerce in. You have to add more roads to make it a more efficient system. Otherwise, it starts to get clogged and backed up. That's effectively what your body is doing. And if you're not taking care of your body, then things just like San Jose doesn't take care of their fucking roads, no matter how many taxes I pay, then your roads are full of potholes, right? And
diverticulitis,
construction signs and all kinds of things. That basically is compared to like plaques that will build up in the system. So as your cardiovascular trainer, you're building more of a pathway. You're reducing your propensity to have these plaques build up, and you're also volumizing through vasodilation, vasoconstriction, which without getting too deep, the blood vessels expand and they constrict. If we can expand them and get more nutrients and proper nutrients through them, we can get these bad things that kind of clog up and fuck up our roadways out of there, right? It pushes them on through. And not only does it get it out of there, it can put them in places and take them to places they need in order to go through like a filtration system to either be expelled as waste or actually used in metabolic process. So if I'm not boring you already, I'm going to take this a couple steps further because all of these things get super important when we start to look at the different things that people are trying to accomplish in the gym or with their health and fitness program. We've talked about this before. There's a triangle of awareness. I don't care who you are and what you're doing. You're trying to do one of three or a combination of three things. That's either to have a better quality of life, be healthier, get out of pain, have more energy, just live more vibrantly. That's one side of the triangle. The other side is going to be you want to look better naked, right? I mean, who doesn't want that?
I want both sides.
There's an aesthetic piece, right?
I want all of them.
And then the other side would be like performance. You are trying to perform at a higher level, and whether that's competitively, semi-competitively, physically, or whatever, those things will all be positively impacted by cardiovascular training. So we've talked about I've talked about what cardiovascular training, I guess, is. What are the basic tenets in order to make this happen? Like, what do we have to do to the body in order to impact the cardiovascular system? Cece.
You have to move.
How long, how much, how hard?
That varies based on the person. So, I mean, you're talking about performance as far as athletically, or are you talking about performance for an individual who wants to be able to go out and is at Mission Peak, go hike for a weekend? It's all based on goals and based on who's in front of you. So as far as like, maybe you have somebody who has had an injury or an elderly person and their whole goal is, you know what, I want to be able to walk down to my mailbox without losing my breath and coming back and being fatigued and having to take a nap before I can go into my kitchen and get a snack. I mean, so yeah, you're going to have to work on their cardiovascular endurance to be able to do that. So, the basic tenet is you've got to move depending on what your goals are. Just like anything else, you start slow. So you start with what you can do. And then I think a general rule would be, add on 10 to 20% to increase your distance, your time, your frequency. I mean, there's a lot of different ways as far as how you approach the increase. So you're talking about duration. You're talking about frequency. You're talking about intensity. And then I think it was the type, yeah. Right? So those are your four primary.
Yeah. So those are kind of the top when you're thinking about cardio, you got frequency, intensity, time, and type. Like it's much like resistance training as well, which I want to talk about for a second, because if you haven't been moving at all, you can get a tremendous amount of cardiovascular impact just through resistance training. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, again, what I hear out there a lot is people going, hey, it's got to be resistance training all the time. Listen, I'm going to be the first person to tell you, like, if you're not moving and you're looking to just be in general better health and some better level of health and achieve a little bit of a better level of performance, excuse me. And you maybe only have 2 or 3 days a week to do it in, then get on a good resistance training program that might start to incorporate some level of conditioning, like through some cardiovascular programming. And that's what you could add on as extra, because I for a few different reasons. One of which is cardiovascular or resistance training program sends signals to produce what we'll call anabolic hormones. Those are hormones that create growth, right? And those are the signals that are telling you to basically upregulate systems like how many calories you're going to burn and how you're going to utilize your nutrients and what hormones you're going to produce in order to make all of those things happen. Where when you start to get into a little bit more intense cardiovascular exercise, walking is probably not going to do it, right?
Active recovery.
Yeah, it's more of an active recovery. But for somebody that's even like very sedentary, it's going to be beneficial for a while until you're not progressively overloading it anymore. But my point is the high level of cardiovascular exercise does a couple of things. First off, in general, what it will do is it will tell your body to downregulate systems. Like, we need to get more efficient at using the same amount of energy to get the same work done. And it becomes more catabolic. That is, you have more propensity to start breaking down tissue or nutrients within tissue that you want to have to maintain muscle mass, right? And or increase your muscle mass. So, but I don't want to, I want to make sure people understand that you don't have to do it all at one time. That a great place to start would be through resistance training, and then, start to build up some, what we call capacity. And then within that resistance training, you can start to add certain types of modalities and play with your frequency and your intensity and your rest times and things like that during your resistance training program to impact your cardiovascular system and get the benefits that we mentioned: increase of blood vessels within your system, strengthening that heart, having that heart become more effective and efficient at pumping the same amount of blood. We call that stroke volume. So let's say, and I don't quote me on these numbers, but let's say the average heart at sitting, completely sedentary, doing nothing, pumps like 4 to 6 liters at a time, or sorry, in 1 minute. So in one minute time, the average heart for the average person is pumping, while sedentary, is 4 to 6 liters. Think about that. So an Nalgene bottle, like one of those clear bottles, that's 2 liter or 1.5 liters, or sorry, that's 1 liter. So 4 to 6 of those things that full of blood are being pumped through that heart at one time, sedentary, just sitting still. With increased cardiovascular activity, or starting to really work into, let's say, running or cycling or something like that, depending on the level of athlete, depending on the level of intensity and the individual size, the amount of all of those things, it can be somewhere between like 24 to 36 liters in a minute. Now do the math on that. That's more than 5x.
I'm looking it up right now. It's insanity.
Yeah. That's like 5x the amount of blood volume moved. So if you're a sedentary individual that does nothing, like you're not active at all, right? And you are now asking your body to pump up to 35, let's say, liters of blood in a single minute, and you have a very weak heart, that means your heart has to pump twice as, or 5x as many times in that amount of time as somebody that's more fit. So going back to stroke volume, the person that is really, that has been doing cardiovascular training and has what we'll call, I'm just going to kind of say it right now, has a good engine, right? We're going to talk about building the engine. They'll be able to do that much more effectively because their stroke volume is higher. For every pump, it pumps more volume of blood. So you don't have to pump as many times. Think about that as you get stronger and you get more fit, all those blood vessels also start to expand more, right? So it starts to fill up that vascular system. And you're not worried about low blood pressure at this point. Like when you exercise, you actually increase your blood pressure. So there are benefits that come along with that. And again, so stroke volume is one of those things that you can benefit by. And so your heart doesn't have to work as hard to pump the same amount of blood, exercising or not exercising. And you're only going to get so much of that strictly through your resistance training program. So I want to make a note of that. And how that then impacts those people that are those different goals that you might have. So I think I've already talked about it with regard to like, if your goal is general health and wellness, this should start making sense.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm pushing the bad shit out. I'm bringing the good shit in. I'm strengthening my vascular system as well as my heart and my lungs. I'm becoming more efficient. I have to work less hard to get the same amount of work done. Those are all good benefits, right? Sure. If I'm a performance athlete, I want to run a triathlon. I want to be in a CrossFit competition. I want to run a Spartan race. This should start making sense to you. Right.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Like I don't have to work as hard to get it as the same amount of work done. We're going to come back to what happens if you don't have good muscle structure, if you don't have a solid neuromuscular system, and no matter what your cardiovascular system is like, if those things aren't matched up, how it won't matter. But the point of that being is it should make perfect sense. Like I have a stronger heart, I'm more effective, more efficient. I should be able to go longer and further with this improved sort of state. Let's talk about the physique person who pushes this shit up.
Went right to the side on that. I love it.
I do not want to talk about cardiovascular exercise or your cardio program specifically as it relates to physique or fat loss changes, but I do want to touch on it because I think it's it's important. But I think it's been bastardized a lot when we talk about 1,000%. Cardiovascular training. And so maybe we can just spend a couple of minutes there. What most people I think have their head wrapped around when it comes to cardio is like, how much do I have to do? How hard do I have to work in order to have abs?
For sure.
Right. Maybe we break it down to that. So when we're looking at that kind of cardiovascular exercise and what we're looking to do physiologically, maybe we can talk about the different types of exercises, cardiovascular exercise that you can do to get benefits. They're both going to provide benefits, but the reasons why you would do both. So I'll break it down into two things and then I'll cut over.
Hit list.
Right. So you got, So there's a couple different ways. The first one I think most people are familiar with and will actually be the second one on my list, but it would be HIIT training, high intensity interval training. So we're going to come back to that. The other one would be what's been termed a couple of different things. One, when I was coming around, we called it long, slow distance training, LSD, or you'll hear it called SSD, SSC. Steady state cardio. And the other one is LISS. Low intensity, steady state cardio, right? So LISS is the other thing. So those are two different types of ways to go about doing it. For those people that have spent any time in the cardio world, they understand those things kind of at maybe a high level, and I wanted to break it down. What is the difference between LISS, steady state cardio, LSD, that's all one thing now. We're talking about the same thing, just calling it something different, and HIIT training. What is happening at the physiological level and how those things impact your body. So maybe I turn it over to you, Jeff, specific to the physique side of things and when or how you might picture those for somebody who's not super familiar.
So for physique, when we're looking at anything, we're looking at fat loss, right? And I'm going to use this as a tool to increase fat loss at the end of the nutritional cycle. Like as I'm coming into preparation or stepping on stage, I'm going to add this HIIT or LISS. And this is going to be athletically dependent on each individual and their recovery, right? Like I could add LISS as a 20 to 30 minute stimulant at the end to also burn more calories, but at the same time, not have so much of a deteriorating factor.
Recovery
right?
debt. So can you explain what that might look like?
So for instance, if I do legs the day before on Tuesday and on Wednesday, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go on a little 20-minute walk. I just walk down the street. That's going to be more of an active recovery for me. If I on the same day went and I did a high intensity interval training for, let's say, my same muscle group, and I'm trying to get after it, I'm not going to have the right amount of gains, right? I'm going to have muscular fatigue. This is going to prevent me from producing as much cardiovascular as I can, right? So you're literally playing with two different energy systems, whereas I could go in and be like, I'm going to use a recovery fashion for this modality, whereas I want to increase my capacity for, let's say, intensity, or like you're talking about the base system, I'm going to focus on that more, right? And so a lot of the guys with physique, it's all about the calorie burn and how much fat I'm going to lose over time. And I'm going to tell you guys, if you guys are starting out with an hour of cardio right out the gate, you are literally going to have a hard time. Cardio for me and anyone else is doing it properly is you're focusing on your nutritional capacity first. And the last 2-3 we can get up to a month of where we're going to titrate, because endurance and cardio capacity comes a lot faster than anything else and actually leaves a lot faster than anything else. So if I start out with the hour of cardio on week one,
you've left yourself nowhere to go.
Where the fuck am I going to go? Yeah. And that same hour on week 2 is going to produce 50%, 45 to 50% less calorie burn. I'm going to be that more efficient.
So it's a good point, Jeff. So let's stop for a second. And Cece, I want to talk about this just in terms of physiologically, kind of what's happening here. Like when we get into this physique space, and I want to break it down because there's not a person probably listening that can't relate to this at some level. Like I want to lose fat. And so cardio, like I know I need to do that. Nutrition makes sense. And, obviously if I want my biceps to get bigger, I got to do arm curls. So I got to do some resistance training, all that stuff. But what Jeff is talking about here is like doing the bare minimum necessary in order to
elicit the most response
from a caloric burn perspective, so that I'm burning that additional body fat without a cost to my muscle tissue. Mm-hmm. And the word titration there is I'm toggling dials and switches and turning dials, to make sure that I'm getting just the right amount of nutrients, right? Proteins, carbohydrates, fats in the right combination in order to elicit the most amount of fat loss in the most reasonable amount of time, so that I can come into this thing in my tightest and my leanest or whatever, whenever that event is, whether it's the vacation in the bathing suit or it's the stepping up on stage in the bathing suit. And to his point, it's like, if you're going all the way in right at the beginning, you've left yourself nowhere to go. What he's saying is like, and not to be redundant, but it's like, we should be doing everything we possibly can from a nutrition perspective, dialed in, and on top of the volume intensity that we're using within our training program, and what my body can do reasonably, because without going into too far of a deficit, mm-hmm. right? So that I maximize the benefits of all of the things that I'm doing. So I just start to add in a little bit of additional activity.
Exactly.
And so maybe that's just walking outside or on a treadmill for 20 minutes a day until I recognize, because to your point, this is physiologically, I want you to maybe talk about this, is the body's going to adapt to that very quickly. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Well, I was just sitting here thinking, like, the body is an amazing thing. So as far as the adaptation that the body's going to go through to the demands that are being placed upon it, and as far as like the fueling of the body is going to conserve as much as it possibly can. What am I looking for? Conserve its energy as much as it possibly can to be efficient. So if you start, like Jeff was saying, if you start doing cardio, I'm not a bodybuilder. I've never been in the physique world, but I understand as far as the process. Like if you start that at the beginning, when you're starting your program, like he said earlier, it's going to leave you no room. The only thing that you can do is do more cardio and then cut your nutrition back. And if you cut your nutrition back, then you're not feeding the machine. You're not feeding your body to perform and go through the training. And so then, yes, you're going to end up in a recovery debt. So then you're going to be doing more and more and more cardio, trying to get the results that you want. And at the same time, you're not going to be fueling. And so it's kind of like a losing battle, I think.
Yeah,
double-edged sword.
Yeah, double-edged sword.
What 100% is a double-edged sword. It is a double-edged sword. So you mentioned like maybe adding HIIT in, and so that would be a place that would give you some room, right? So if you've been doing the LSD or the LISS or whatever the hell we want to call it, right? And we get to that certain point where we're like, oh, we really need to kind of accelerate some things here a little bit. Maybe I miscalculated. I'm a little bit off. So I could start adding some HIIT, doing it on particular days that aren't going to impact the efforts for the gains that I was trying to achieve for the physique component. I could start to add in some HIIT training, right? Let's talk about HIIT training.
Yeah, HIIT training became really popular in, was it the 90s, I think, or maybe the 2000s, I think. Yeah. And so I think most people originally, when HIIT came around, they thought of Tabata training. As far as by Dr. Tabata, where it's like a 20 seconds on, 10 seconds rest. And it's like for 4 minutes,
like 8 to 8
right?
minutes, I think.
Yeah. But when HIIT came around, the whole idea was the post-exercise oxygen. No, wait, hold on.
You got it. You totally have it right now.
Excess post-exercise oxygen consumption.
You got it. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. I knew what you were talking about.
Excess post-oxygen consumption. So that the idea behind the HIIT training was, you go through short durations of high intensity exercise and then maybe 15, 20 minutes. And then the body from a physiological perspective continues to burn calories or energy during its recovery period. So you don't have to do an hour or a half an hour of steady state cardio. You can do these short bouts of intense cardiovascular exercise, pulling on a different energy system, which then isn't going to necessarily tax or create a catabolic state for the individual.
Right, because we haven't gone on for a prolonged period of time.
Exactly.
Effectively, we've sent signals that don't impact those catabolic hormones the same as what can happen with the long duration exercise, particularly if you're underfed, under-recovered, or in recovery dead, as you suggested.
Yeah, because, we just touched on energy systems. And so the body, it has energy systems. So if you want to do like short bursts of exercise, it utilizes one energy system. If you want to do something that's, a little bit more prolonged, then it uses a different type of energy system. And if you want to do something that's more long, steady state, then there's another energy system. And you don't use those energy systems like individually. They are all work together.
That's like the biggest fucking thing there.
Yeah.
But like you had alluded to earlier, as far as, doing physique, if you start with a long, slow distance, then you're going to have to change things up to get the elicited response that you want in order to lose that body fat.
Yeah, that's two things.
Where you're going in to hit on that.
Yeah, two things that are key. One is your cardiovascular system and the aerobic energy system. Aerobic glycolysis, right? Aerobic and aerobic glycolysis before you get into anaerobic glycolysis is going to adapt very fast, like within days. And at the same time, it will adjust back very fast. If you're not doing those types of exercises, it will let you know. It's just like and I've said this before, like you're running consistently for like a month and you're seeing these huge gains and you're feeling so much better because your body is very quickly adapting both neuromuscularly, but more specifically metabolically, how those energy systems you just mentioned are working. Then take a week off, right? Like something happened, work got crazy, you went on vacation, whatever, and then come back, your first day back, and let's say the modality was running, right? You go out there and you go like, holy shit, it feels like I'm starting all over again. That was your body basically adjusting back to getting very, very comfortable. You didn't make it continue to progress or continue to stay at that level. So it adapts both ways. Adaptation is important, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing. We just need to understand that versus the neuromuscular system, where like if you're on a workout plan for say 6 months and you're lifting weights and you take a week off and you come back in,
you're stronger.
Yeah, you could be stronger, right? Your body is not just needed a little recovery, and it doesn't adapt back the other way. It actually recovers in a different way and it progresses in a different way. So people, understanding that or panicking like, oh my God, I missed my cardio. This is going to feel awful, or whatever. Like I get that, but that's those energy systems adapting. It's not that's a metabolic adaptation versus a neuromuscular adaptation, which would be how your brain, muscular system, hormone system deals with the stresses that you put on it through that type of exercise or stimulus. So yeah, we talked about energy systems and we talked about the two different types of exercise that we generally think of. It's the long, slow, steady state again, or long, steady state or LISS, low intensity, steady state. What I see that being, again, it always comes back to physique, right? And that's where but gosh, this shit's been around forever. I mean, the most common or the one that's been around since the dawn of time is running or walking, but also running. I mean, that's what we do as humans. That's what we are built to do. And the great part about that type of training is it doesn't take you any equipment. All you have to have is your own body. Maybe. On your own. Yeah. Maybe a pair of shoes and a place to do it. And get outside and train, as I always say, right? So getting outside to do that. And so running or just walking or hiking or some form of, you use the term ambulation, just getting out there and moving your body is one, it's movement, which you mentioned as being the most important thing for the system in the first place, CC at the beginning. But two, it's very doable and it helps you improve lots of things, posture. And as you start to, as one, but also as you start to increase intensity. So I move from a walk to a run, I start to have neuromuscular changes, right? And those neuromuscular changes interplay with the metabolic changes that are happening at the cardiovascular system. So we talked about the basic stuff. We also talked about some of the more in-depth energy system stuff, and we talked about the physique stuff. I want to move away from that. I want to move away from that and get into more of the performance and also longevity piece and how you can use both of those types of training to really benefit you. And where I see people making
real quick
assumptions. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I hit the hit piece on the aesthetic side?
Please do.
So you guys, bodybuilders, if you want to have the highest result for body fat, stop doing the hour of cardio. Body fat loss. No, you want to gain body fat. You guys literally start adding 5 minutes of hit on the first 4 to 5 weeks of your show. And slowly increase that 2 minutes over time to where you're doing hit. You're actually going to preserve muscle, all of that good stuff that hit provides. You're not going to have to spend a long time on the like low intensity stuff where joint stuff can arise. I'm out here, I'm moving.
It's also more time. Right,
it's more time. So at the end of my workout,
I got to add.
What is 5 minutes versus 20 to 30 minutes?
Right.
That's a huge amount of time.
Right.
So it's more time constraint. I'm going to preserve more muscle and I'm going to burn more calories within a more efficient time.
If you do it properly.
If you do it properly.
If you do it properly, which we have programs on this, but anyways, but if you guys do it properly, you're going to lose body fat more efficiently within a less amount of time. And you're going to have to focus less on your nutrition. Right? Oh, I need to come in and I need to do all of these adjustments where no, you don't. You just literally did way too much in the upcoming weeks. You might have refed too late.
There's a lot of things.
There's a lot of things that are going on, but with that, just whole little rant right there is focusing on smaller bouts of high intensity exercise for cardio, for bodybuilders or people that are trying to lose weight more efficiently.
Physique, yeah.
Add that into slower periods of like, I'm going to start at 5 weeks, 4 weeks. And I'm going to start at 5 minutes. I'm going to slowly increase nothing past 12. I'm going to cut off. I'm going to start my strength program again. And I'm going to slowly increase that when I need to have more. And then after that, you can add lists if you wanted to do something different and change with the body. But there's different ways that you can program this for fat loss or for the performance athletes, which we'll get into right now. Yeah.
So I think going into the performance as we dive into it, I see a couple of things out there. First off is that the whole long, slow distance or endurance training that I grew up around and that I spent a lot of time, and I know you did too, CC, is almost going away. You just don't see or hear about it a lot. And so to give a little bit of a personal background, believe it or not, this would have been about 40 pounds ago. Like I was, a little bit of my history is like, when I was in my early 20s or mid 20s, I got up to 260. I was trying to compete on stage at like 230. So I was carrying around 260 pounds of weight, and I knew I had to cut. And there just became a point in my life where I was like, I felt miserable. My joints hurt. My performance just was shit. I was used to being like a strength and power athlete, but I always enjoyed getting out and hiking and riding my bike and things like that. And I just couldn't do that shit anymore because it felt miserable. It was too heavy, right? It's just a different lifestyle. I was eating so many calories and whatever. Bottom line is I decided like one day I quit. I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. And I went back to sort of my roots into more endurance and training. And I spent time about 10 years. Actually, it's a long time. It's long enough, right? It's definitely long enough. Completely reversing all the things that I'd been doing for the previous, say, 7 to 8 years or so. And that was I wasn't focused on putting on any more muscle. In fact, I needed to take some off, right? And I was okay doing that. Like I needed to pull down. Like I was a physique athlete. I was like, I got to stop this business.
The only man in the world that's
ever done that probably too, and didn't panic about it. I was like, dude, I got to get lighter. So one of the first things I did was I got back on the bicycle, and over the next 2 to 3 years, I really started to pull that weight off in a healthy way. I tried to start running a little early. My body just could not handle the weight that I was trying to do it on top of the fact that I hate running. I still don't like it to this day. I'll do it. for the sake of getting outside, but for shorter periods of time. But I spent a couple of years pulling all that off. And then I spent about 7 years being fairly competitive in both triathlon and adventure racing. And triathlon is what it is. I also did some biathlon and some other kind of combo
Skating
events.
and shooting?
No, sorry, not duathlon, not biathlon.
I was like, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, not biathlon, duathlon, which is running and riding. The other thing that I did was adventure racing. And adventure racing was, if you think like Spartan racing, only with a land navigation component and way more stuff involved. So imagine this, you go out for 3 days, you know, you're going out for 3 days. You don't have any idea about where you're going to go outside of like, you have a map of the general area, and there are going to be these different, you basically have to go waypoint to waypoint, through land navigation. That's compass and a map and a few other pieces of equipment. When you show up, you've been told you're going to need 3 big boxes. And in those, in box number 1 at transition area number 1, which also ends up being like transition area number 5 or 7 or whatever down the line, you need to have your cycling gear in that one. Right. And you're also going to need to have nighttime gear for navigating and potentially cycling at night. In box number 2, you're going to need your kayaking equipment. So you're going to need any of the things that you're bringing along outside of your boat. And we'll get back to that in a second. You're going to need your emergency equipment, your survival equipment, your strobe light, throw rope, pump, and any of that. And then the last one, you're going to need food, and you're going to need your rappelling gear. You're going to need to know that. And then you're going to bring those boxes to the start of the event. You're going to drop them off, and you're also going to drop off your bike. Yeah, which at this point is a mountain bike, right? And you're also going to drop off your kayak, or you're going to be able to rent a kayak from us or whatever. And then you go to the meeting at night, and they tell you to bring your maps and your equipment, and they give you like the first 2 points on the map. Before you can't get any of the other points until you get to those other points. Actually, I think it was about 3. So first off, if your land navigation sucks, you're fucked right from the get-go. So there's always somebody on the team that needed to be really good at this, right? So because you didn't want to mess that up, or otherwise you're in big trouble. And then when you go through, and so you could start out the event with like a 10-mile trek, and that could be bushwhacking, right? Through to a specific point. When you get there, you get the next set of coordinates, and that takes you to the next thing. Next thing you know, you wind up on, I forget what order I put those boxes in, but you wind up in the beach. Right. And the beach there's your box, right. And there's your kayak, and you have like a 5-mile kayak. And there's a cutoff time, because once it gets dark, they don't want you in the water. Lots of stories about some shit I got myself into, or we got ourselves into as a team and doing this. Then you come back, and then you move to the next waypoint. You kind of get the gist. And so then the next thing you know, you're mountain biking, you're going up a mountain at night. You got to come down the mountain. Bottom line is, this is over 48 to 72 hours. Yeah. I've also done like 8 to 12 12-hour events. HIIT training will not fucking get you there. It won't. You have to have this long, slow distance training. Completing an Olympic level or Olympic distance triathlon, HIIT training is not going to get you there. And I'm not saying everybody needs to do this. If you want to run a 10K really effectively, right, or 5K really effectively or efficiently, HIIT training is not going to get you there. You might be a great athlete and beat some people, but you're not going to beat the athletes
for sure
in that particular sport.
You're not training that proper energy system.
Yeah. I bring this into the equation because now what I see is people going out there and trying to do things in life, like on the weekends as hobbies or things like that. And all they've ever been exposed to is kind of this HIIT, I'm just going to say it, fucking Orange Theory type shit, right? Or whatever, where they show up and they're surprised. They're like freaking out because they never put any value or time into building their engine. HIIT training will give you some level of an engine, but it is not going to build that base to where your body understands how to use those different energy systems. You basically left one of the massive energy systems, which is the one we run on most of the day, that beta oxidative, which then moves into that aerobic system where we're using oxygen, right, to power our bodies. If you've not built that engine to then power all that muscle you put on your frame, you're gonna find out real fast that you're in big trouble, right? So this it's kind of like a lost art of understanding how to program this stuff into your program. And it's been like, oh, I don't want to do that because running's dumb. Look at me, I've got abs and I don't even run, right? I don't do a lick of cardio and I have abs. That's not the point. That's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah, me too, dude. I can barely breathe when I fucking go up a flight of stairs. Like, cool, dude.
So here's real quick, and I'll shut up. But like, if I go out on the range and we start running drills, I work out with a lot of these guys that run around and they do a lot of HIIT training. Like, and it's very short bouts of exercise on top of whatever training they're doing. I'm always shocked that when some of the end of these drills, when they come back out, they're just dying.
Gassed.
And it's not because they're out of shape. They're not in condition.
They don't know how to use the oxygen.
Because over time, it might be cool for the first 2 drills, but they don't have endurance or stamina, right? And I'm sitting there going, why are you guys all breathing so heavy? And it's not because I am in great shape. It's because I have an engine that my body goes back to the extent, going back to these events, that as long as I kept my long, slow distance training up, again, and I did that consistently, 4 to 6 weeks out from an event or a triathlon, I could do what you just suggested, Jeff, which was now I start entering into this realm of adding in the HIIT training, adding in these short bouts of intense training, both during the LSD training.
Nice.
Right. Which is really important because they don't operate independently, and working in constituent parts and then expecting them to work together is not an effective way of training. But being able to then add in like 4 to 6 weeks out from an event, I could come in really good shape because my body was like peaking on the VO2 side of things, that being my body's ability for oxygen carrying capacity and shuttling nutrients in and shuttling nutrients out while also expanding my capacity to do intense work. So I bring up the story or the past in the history because I think it provides some context to where I see people going with like, I want to be fit for kind of all these different things, yet you don't train that way. You don't train that way at all. And CC, I know you've had a lot of experience yourself in triathlon. We've talked about this on the show, like multiple triathlons, multiple Ironman events and whatnot. I wonder what the advice you would give somebody who's like, I hear what Scott's saying and I really want to have a better engine, but how could I start in my head thinking about how to effectively do this without beating my body up, without killing myself, and without hating myself while I'm doing it? Because it can get boring. It can get lonely out there.
Yeah. Well, I think, you said without hating yourself, and what was it I heard recently? There's a phrase, but choose something that you enjoy doing. Don't punish yourself. Like, when you're doing your cardiovascular training, have fun with it. And so I think that's number one, where you start. Choose something that, you enjoy doing. And then the other thing is vary it. So, let's just take cycling, for example. I've been a runner for the majority of my life. And then when I got into cycling, I could barely make it, a mile on my road bike. And I was like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? Like, I can run for miles, but I can't even pedal a mile down the road, and my legs feel like they're going to, fall off, and I'm breathing really hard and stuff like that. So, okay, I started with a mile then, and I'm exaggerating. But then it's like, okay, so how long did that take me? All right, that took me, 10 minutes. 15 minutes.
God damn, that's
and then it's like, okay, so, the next time I go out, maybe a day, 2 days later, go out. All right, let's make it, 20 or 30 minutes. Right. So it's just gradual increases. And then, before you know it, making sure that you're fueling yourself and recovering and you're not putting yourself in a recovery debt, just building upon that. And then, you can, if you like metrics, I like metrics.
Yep.
I wear a wearable device. So what is my heart rate? What's my respiratory rate? How am I feeling? What's my RPMs on my bike? What's the distance that I covered? And I just start tracking all of that. And then, if I want to go longer, then do I have a goal distance? What's that goal distance? How long is it taking me to get half the distance and then to the full distance? And then adding in the components as far as the intensity factor. So building my base.
Right. So there's a lot, you just said a lot of things right there. And I think it's important we just pause for a second and acknowledge a couple of things. First off, you said start slow, right? And pick the thing that you want to do. It also should be appropriate. So our wants don't necessarily always align with our needs when we're starting to think through these programs. This should be well thought out.
It needs to transition well to whatever you're
doing. Yeah. Another thing I would say is like pick at least a couple, right? Because while you're really into this one thing now, right? You're probably going to want to have some variety or some variability. And that's what you were saying, like, where do I start and finish and how far and how long and whatever else. So,
start to get an overuse energy.
Yeah, you can start to get some overuse, and some of that overuse is just getting bored with the same activity. So if I'm going out, you choose running. That's really, most people can do that. You choose running. The first thing you do is you start slow and you go out and maybe again, you said a mile. I'm going to say, let's start with 10 minutes, right? Let's start with
running. Yeah.
Let's start with 5 minutes, right? And let's go to 5 minutes with a 1 minute walk to a 1 minute run to a 1 minute walk to a 1 minute run. And we keep adding up till then finally we can run for 10 minutes, right? And then we add on the 1 minute walk to the 1 minute run until we can get to 15 minutes and so on. But eventually you get to 30 minutes or whatever. I got to be honest, like anymore for me, if I'm running past 30 minutes, I better be getting paid or chased by somebody, right? Like with or like a bear.
Down, yeah.
No, it just sucks. Like I hate it. Like I feel like it's miserable.
There's better ways to get it.
So I choose alternative forms of cardiovascular type exercise. You can do this in the gym too, but for me, I hate doing cardio in the gym. I cannot stand, I loathe it. So I
look around them in the same spot. I'm like, dude, I've been walking for 15 minutes in the same spot.
But
I once ran 13 miles on a treadmill facing a white wall.
Yes.
That's insanity, dude.
Sounds miserable.
Coming back and masochistic.
Yeah, it's just, I would be traumatized for
Again,
life.
it goes back to what it is that you like to do. What are your goals? Because at the time I had a goal, but for some individuals, I mean, it's just longevity. They want to be able to go and enjoy life, enjoy being kids, being a weekend warrior. So
that's me. That's me to some extent. I mean, I again, people that know me outside of here know I do a lot of things, but I want, when I get to the weekends, like if we decide, hey, let's go out for a bike ride. I mean, it was 2 weekends ago, we were on a trip, and like it was like,
we're going to go 26 miles and then 50 miles later.
It was about a 30-mile ride, I think, on the map.
It was supposed to be 26 miles and then it was 50 miles later.
So she remembers
those 3 miles.
I took a snapshot of my bike computer.
So we went out, we got out about 10 miles and we got to this cutoff point where I was like, it might be cool if we go over there. Right. And then I'm like, hey, let's put some mileage on. We got nowhere to be today. Let's suffer a little bit, let's challenge. Challenge ourselves. And at this point, we'd already been doing, like 30, 40 mile rides. So it's like, we had a little bit of a base under, so I'm not worried about it. But it's like, okay, we're going to need to rip the Band-Aid off at some point here and push the mileage, going back to frequency, intensity, time, and type. So we ripped the Band-Aid off, and I chose a ride that was, let's just say it was pretty challenging. There was a lot of up, a lot of elevation change. 14 miles of the ride was on a dirt road. We were on our road bikes. There was a lot to this ride, but here's the point. Yeah. Here's the point. Was I challenged? Yes. Was I miserable? Absolutely not. And when we finished that ride, it was like I got something accomplished and I impacted my fitness in an amazing way. And I felt so good about it.
And you know what? The next day,
I felt great.
Felt good.
Felt so great.
My body didn't feel beat up.
Felt so energized. And that's because we'd had that base underneath us. Now that doesn't change the fact that there'll be days when I come in here and I'll grab that Bulgarian bag and the kettlebell or whatever else. And I'll go off with like a HIIT training session. And I have that capacity. Like, again, going back to elevation change, I didn't like, oh my God, there's this huge mountain we got to climb. Like
5,000
I would say that
I can get out of the saddle and I can push.
I would say what you're building, if you ever come back to HIIT, is you're going to have a higher injury. Absolutely.
So here's the thing. So because I have that base, and this was a point I kept circling all the way back into, because I have that cardiovascular base, because I have that stroke volume, because I have that previous history with vascular fitness in general, but also cardiovascular fitness, my body can very quickly come back to that. It's like what they refer to as like muscle memory. So if I can build that base and then I reintroduce the HIIT training or the very specific training to whatever it is that I'm going to be doing, or think I'm snowboarding, wakeboarding, trail running, whatever else, I can very quickly build on top of that. And I have that to work with. And I think people miss out on a lot of things in life and enjoying a lot of outdoor activity that can improve their health, their longevity, their vibrancy in so many different ways, time with the family for that matter, or with your partner or with your spouse, whatever the case, because they're thinking about cardiovascular work as exercise and not activity.
It's fun.
Like when I get on the floor, I train.
It's like
I
a
don't
negative
work
connotation,
out.
right?
Yeah, I train.
Yeah.
I'm training to be doing something different. This is just part of it.
Yeah.
And if you maybe took a look at your cardiovascular work a little bit differently, it might set you up for a little bit more success and enjoyment of those activities.
You need to be a monster in both resistance training and cardiovascular training, right? So when we talk about you have a weak cardiovascular system, how long is it going to take you to recover between workouts, and not even between workouts, but between sets, right? So if I have a higher capacity between sets, between workouts, I'm going to be able to recover quicker. I can come back quicker between sets and then between workouts, right? It's all, your recovery system is all about your cardiovascular system. If you have a weak cardiovascular system, you're going to recover shit.
It won't be as efficient for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Again, that's another big missing piece. And I think we're trying to allude that. I don't know if we made that point enough already, but yeah, the stronger your cardiovascular system is, the more or the better position you are in to recover and stay out of recovery debt. There's a programming piece to this.
And the nutrition piece.
And we've talked ad nauseum about the nutrition piece on other podcasts, but there's a caloric need that you have to fulfill. There is a macronutrient need that you have to fulfill.
We are not looking at these calories of like, these are calories burned and I'm allowed to eat these back.
You're not going to chase the donuts off on the treadmill.
Not happening.
The cheesecake from the night before on the treadmill on the next day, right? Now that's not how it
shouldn't be thought of like that.
Correct. And I think, again, it's just been dumbed down to that extent. Yes. So
obviously you need to fuel for what exercise you're doing. But I know constantly my clients are like, hey, calorie burn, I've done this and this is what I do to like eat this. And I'm like, no,
the body doesn't work like that.
They're watching their wearable or whatever to see, did I burn the calories off that equated in my Fitness Pal or my calorie tracker the night before dinner with the 8 glasses of wine, the cheesecake and the fondue.
I get it all the time.
Yeah. Or whatever. No, it doesn't work like that. Your body we're talking about, again, beta oxidation, aerobic, anaerobic states, there's different systems in there. We're not going to cover it on today, but there's also how your muscular system is being impacted during that time and what you're conditioned to do. Choosing those different types of exercise modalities can be important, whether it's in the gym or outside the gym. So whether you've chosen to have multiple memberships at multiple different fitness locations, like I got the cycling membership over here, and I got the Pilates membership over here, and the yoga membership over here, and then the gym membership for my weight training over here. Fine. I think that's great, honestly. Because it gives you that variety and variability, but pick something that you can do when you don't want to do the other thing, and that may complement it. And like running, which can be highly impactful. There's a lot of impact in running, right?
Not everybody should be running.
Not everybody should be running, man. But again, it's an easy one. It's very inexpensive, or easy in the sense where I can just walk out my door or onto a treadmill and do it. But cycling is a great one because it takes you off that impact out of it. It still puts you in some not so great forward flexed, knee flexed, shoulders rounded type positions. I don't want to get down there. We're talking about cardiovascular benefit. But it takes the impact out of it, and you can do longer.
And the other thing is you have greater range of motion. So greater range of motion within the hips and the legs. I mean, you're moving more oxygen, you're moving more blood flow. Versus the impact of running. And running, if you think about it, yes, you can change the intensity as far as with your speed and stuff like that. But again, your gait pattern is still a shorter range of motion versus with the bike.
Just like stability piece too, right?
There's a ton to it. There's also being outside if you're off the bike or off the indoor bike and you're outside and those kind of things. I'm not going to go on the tangent of what I see happening in cycling studios and the idiocy of the things that I see people doing on bikes in some of these studios, the party on the bike thing. I don't get a lot of it.
I think the DJ has a great playlist.
I think there's a time and a place for everything. And some of the stuff is just like, whatever. But coming back to the cycling, the other versus some of the other things, like see a lot of people getting on elliptical trainers, right? And those are shortened.
That's something we don't have here.
Very limited ranges of motion. We very specifically do not have elliptical trainers here for some very specific reasons. So going back to movement patterns and what we're doing throughout the day and muscular recruitment patterns and how they translate and those kind of things, things like step mills, the moving staircase, not the old school stair climber, where you can move through fuller ranges of motion and whatnot. Those are choosing different modalities to challenge your body cardiovascularly, it should, while it's going to get easier with adaptation, you never want it to be too easy. If you keep choosing the same 5K route, right, to run your run every day, don't expect a lot of benefit or a lot of change in performance or benefit to burning more calories or burning fat. So if you're just looking to maintain, then do your same 5K route every day. If you're looking to continually challenge the body in ways that put it in a position where it has to work differently in order to constantly be adapting, as well as constantly working through the recovery debt piece and the fatigue management model, which we've talked about on this thing before, choose different pieces or different modalities to get your workouts on. You mentioned things like the bicycle, like swimming was brought up at the beginning, rowing, or the ski erg. You think you're in good cardiovascular shape and you can run 13 miles like nothing? Well, let me put you on a ski erg, even at slow and at low intensity, at slow tempo. And I'm going to show you right now that your body is not nearly as in shape as you thought it was, or what you think it probably should be, as it relates to legs or the legs that are involved in the running. Right? Yes, you're using your upper body in running, absolutely, and using your upper body, but not like you're using it in a ski erg.
And because generate power through that bottom hinging pattern.
Right. There's all kinds of stuff going on there. So again, choosing different, when you're looking at your cardio program, it doesn't all have to be one thing. You don't have to decide on one thing and keep it there. I prefer to do as many different things as I can. I love the bike because I like being outside, and I love the things I get to see and do. Sure. And it's also like, it takes me away with my fucking computer, my phone. Sometimes I can strap on a podcast, and get educated while I'm doing it, or be entertained. Or sometimes it's just like nothing, it's just the fresh air and the sun. Think about those things as you're thinking about your programming and putting that together, but don't neglect it. Don't neglect the programming. And because you don't think it serves you with regard to your fat loss, because it absolutely will help you in your fat loss if you're continuing to do it. Last thing I want to talk about real quick is kind of how we equate a good cardio workout, right? Because a lot of times we'll get like, did I get sore from lifting weights today? Oh, if I'm sore, fucking great workout. I did my my barbell hip thrust yesterday, or my glutes sore today. Okay, good workout.
Absolutely.
We're having these types of connections to our workout. Cardiovascularly, it's a little bit different. For a long time, like I see people coming out of some of these classes like, well, I got sweaty today. Good workout. So how, CC, if we kind of go back to like managing and programming and checking in on our cardiovascular status and improvements in our cardiovascular status, what are the things we're going to see? How do we monitor it? And how could we effectively, maybe, like I've said before, twist dials, toggle switches in order to get more benefit?
Some of the things that we're going to see is that, the exercise is going to become easier and easier over time. You're going to want to challenge yourself to make it feel more challenging. Some of the other things that we're going to see, we're probably going to at least have more energy throughout the day. We're not going to necessarily be as tired or sluggish at midday or come the evening time. You'll have more energy and drive to want to do things that you might not ordinarily think about doing. I mean, you would stop and think, oh gosh, do I really want to do this? Versus saying, yeah, let's go do this on Saturday, or let's go do this later this afternoon after you've had a workout, or if you've been working out or exercising regularly. Going back to recovery, and let's say you wear a wearable device. Not everybody does, but again, I'm a nerd when it comes to this stuff because I kind of like to know what.
She has two on her wrist right now, by the way. She has a Whoop and an Apple Watch. She just looked at. Okay, she's got two.
I want to know what my numbers are.
Can my team get a fucking zoom in here? Cool, thank you. That's all my makeup team's back there. You guys can't see them, but cool.
But how fast does my heart rate come down from having a certain intensity of my exercise? How high can I push my heart rate? Like if I've been doing something pretty regularly, I'm feeling pretty comfortable, but I want to take it to the next level. One of the things that I'm going to look at is what's my heart rate? How high can I push it, and how fast does it come back down? And then how do I feel? How do I feel the next day? Are my feet hitting the floor when the alarm goes off, or is it snooze? Snooze.
So this is good.
More qualitative data versus the quantitative.
So that's what I'm looking for. So people are like, how do I know if I had a good cardiovascular workout? Well, in recent years, it's been very popular to strap chest straps on people or wearable devices like watches and things.
Polaris.
And everybody is looking at a screen to see, am I working harder than the person next to me? Am I getting into
It's not about the person next to you.
Am I getting into my fat burning zone? This is going to maximize my EPOC and everything else, rather than, dude, you got out and moved today. Great fucking job. Good job. Right. But they're like, if I didn't do it and I didn't do it at this level, I didn't meet this particular marker for the day as it was set in front of me, like I wasn't successful with it.
Yeah. You don't have to punish yourself.
You don't have to punish yourself. I think the other piece to this is like the opposite of what you just said. Okay. So if you're not waking up the next day and you feel like shit, you don't feel recovered, you're not feeling that energy, you're feeling the opposite, you're feeling tired, you're feeling beat up, you're feeling like sore all the time, or you're maybe it's even like an acute soreness at, particular joints or a particular area of muscles in your body on a regular basis. What could that be indicating, and what should you do?
Indicating that, one, you're not getting enough nutrition. Maybe you're not getting enough hydration. Maybe you're not getting enough sleep. Maybe you need to take the day off. Maybe you need to work on some mobility. Maybe you need to do some yoga to help, increase blood flow. But depending on the type of yoga you choose, gently. Maybe
your legs are weak.
Maybe you don't have the neuromuscular strength or neuromuscular capacity and or the strength in order to perform at the level that you're asking your body to perform, and that neuromuscular system isn't recovering. It's not your cardiovascular system. So if you're pushing yourself, and that's great, but if you're pushing yourself and you're not paying attention to those signals that your body is sending you, that's a red flag. Mm-hmm. And you need to back up and kind of take a look at all the things that we talk about on this podcast all the time, which are, what am I doing to benefit my body from all those different angles or those sides on the triangle, to ultimately get the goals that I want in the healthiest way I can, that's fun, but also gives me longevity down the road. Sure. You don't have to suffer. You don't have to suffer. You don't have to feel sick. You don't have to feel nauseous. Actually, if you get to those points, you need to dial it back. Yeah, you probably pushed it too far.
Also, I want to play devil's advocate on the wristwatches real quick. I know everyone's looking at their wearables. I've worn one. It has told me multiple things that are far left of how I feel. I'm very in tune with my body. And when I get out to do cardio, it will tell me things like my heart rate didn't get that high, blah, 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 blah. And I would literally pull myself back to be in these ranges where this wearable was telling me, where I know my body and I easily could push it. I threw that shit away, and I push myself to my threshold where I feel like, okay, I'm breathing too hard, pull it back a bit. And I get to where I know this is my threshold of my cardio, and I'm going to push it for whatever time I can, where I feel like I start to degrade, and I'm going to pull back. Whatever time that was, I'm going to increase it the next week or the next session, right? But I have a wearable on me. I'm like, I'm 150. Right. And I just feel like I'm like I'm not even sweating.
I remember this, Jeff. Mm-hmm. I remember you went through a few of these. I was there with you and we were having these conversations.
Hashtag Oura Ring.
And I remember.
Sucks.
And I remember. Yeah, no, I remember you being really frustrated because you're like, wait. The watch is telling me one thing and the Oura Ring's telling me another. And the Oura we're talking about brands. Yeah. It doesn't seem to be accurate all the time. I'm getting these wild readings.
PRing off the floor when it tells me I'm at 26, readiness. We're out of 100.
Yeah, so it's interesting. There could be some psychosomatic stuff going on there and whatever, in terms of your performance to what the ring is telling you. The problem with it is there's too much data, right? And so how do you use these things properly or most effectively? And I think I see people walking around the gym. They're just constantly checking that thing. Like, am I burning calories? I think it's great. I mean, I think, there's a certain level of accountability, maybe motivation that happens for people. There's some competition that can be pulled in there if you're trying to compete with your buddies, again, in a class or in
you have an app that ties you up.
Well, yeah. So like some different trackers or kind of social apps or whatever. But I think for most people, again, like I've said, with tracking calories and tracking everything, some people need to be tracking more, and there's a lot of people that should be tracking less. So you don't have to be looking at this thing every day to know whether or not you got a good workout or not. In fact, I would encourage you not to. I would encourage you to wear it maybe at the beginning, find out what that says, then get a litmus. And then a week later, throw it back on and see what it's telling you now, right? Because if you're doing the right things, you should start seeing improvement. But to your point, Jeff, I can tell you what, for 7 of those years that I did all that training, I was strapped to a device, and it wasn't the same technology that we're talking about now. Every ride was mapped. I knew every elevation change. I knew every time. I knew my heart rate for everything. I knew my pace, my running pace. This is really at the beginning of like GPS technology. We actually had a foot pod technology. It was really rough, but we used to strap these pods to our shoes. And everything was tracked. Plug it into my computer at the end. I was tracking everything on top of, cross-referencing it against my training program. I made a lot of decisions on my training program that way, despite how I was feeling and performing. Yeah. It was all based on data. And ultimately, and Cece can attest to this, like I haven't had a device. Well, for a very short period of time, I had a iWatch, and I took it off because it was fucking with my head. Like for the same reasons I was just about to say, 7 years later, I took all the device. I don't even ride with the computer. Yeah. If I need to know how far we've gone, I ask Cece, right? Cause she's got all the gadgets, right? I don't want to know. I don't want to be staring at that. Yeah. I want to be out there exercising and trying to be in touch with what's going on.
Push that boundary. Yeah. Some breathing.
Figure it out. Yeah. Because, in competition, as I could tell you, like I didn't want to fucking see that my heart rate was at 205 beats a minute.
Way easier than I am.
I don't want to see that. Like, cause that's going to get inside my head. But outside of that, like I got to feel like, oh, I need to be moving at my like 80% here, and I'm way beyond that. I'm going to have to bail out. So I think the big takeaways from this whole thing are, one, cardio and cardio programming is a bit of a lost art. If you're looking for longevity and long-term performance and overall performance, not just fat loss from a physique perspective, I think it's a lost art. And I think a lot of people could spend more time doing it. And the only way to really understand, just like with the resistance program, is to do it for a long period of time. There are pitfalls, but there's also great benefit that you can get, just like any other type of exercise programming or whatever, you're trying to find the right formula for you. But I really encourage people to maybe revisit that part of their health and wellness program and try to get back into it, because I've seen huge benefits from it. And now more than ever, I think about the longevity benefit. As we get further on, I open this up with heart attacks.
What happens when your heart stops, right?
Yeah. Cardiovascular disease, those types, diabetes, all of those things. This thing works against all of those things. Science, man. If you want to follow science, follow that fucking science, right? So again, a way to maybe revisit and rethink how you're approaching your program as a whole. And don't think that you have to do it all at one time. And keeping in mind that if you're not exercising at all, I still recommend you find a solid resistance training program to get yourself into first. And we layer in the cardio over time.
2 days a week.
As you build consistency, capacity, and an enjoyment and awareness in the things that you're doing. I stand by that statement. But for those of you out there that are continually like, I do my HIIT cardio 2 times a week, so I'm good. I think you're missing out. I think you could be really benefiting yourself in a different way if you approach yourself and maybe started thinking things a little bit different.